Please be seated. This is the first Sunday of the new liturgical year. This is Advent. As Bert noticed on the enclosure you have explaining the Advent wreath, the word Advent is a verb, advenio, which means to come. So we're waiting for the coming of the Messiah. And the theme is, are you ready? And, you may think, well, gosh, we've had Advent over and over and, but this is a time to reflect on what's the state of your readiness? You think about it, we have birthdays and anniversaries that are special days of the year. And I'm sure on your birthday you think about your life and how it's going. And certainly on your anniversary you think about how you and your partner are doing in terms of your union together. Well, Advent is the same thing. Advent is another period of time, much like Lent, where you begin to think about how your journey in life is going. The readings basically reflect the fact that for many people throughout history, it had not gone that well. We have the lighting of the Advent candle remembering the patriarchs. Abraham lived about 1,800 years before Christ. Isaiah, the first reading that Karen read, he prophesied from 742 to 701 BC. He was someone who was the prophet of the southern kingdom of Judah, Israel being the northern kingdom. And he basically was telling people that they need to stop worshiping foreign gods. The superpower of the time was Assyria. And so the people, thinking that it would assuage the Assyrian powers, would worship gods of other countries like Assyria, or if they wanted to rebel against Assyria, the Egyptian gods. And Isaiah was speaking to the fact that there is only one God, our God, Yahweh. Why are you committing the sin of idolatry? If you don't stop, the world basically is going to come to a point where this nation will be conquered. Isaiah had two kids, two sons, and they have long names, but in English, the names of the two sons were the remnant shall return, meaning that once the country is conquered, only a small number of people will be left, the remnant. So can you imagine naming your kid, hi, what's your son's name? Oh, he's Remnant will return. Oh, hi, Remnant, how are you? The other one was the hungering prey, namely that the country would be the prey of another country. He named his kids, giving them a sort of a theological meaning. He was able to go in and out of courts. He was the prophet during 4 kings, the first of whom was Uzziah. And he was so easy to go in and out of the court that the thought was that he must have come from a fairly aristocratic family. Well, Isaiah got kind of frustrated. And so what he did was he wanted to tell the people the vision of what should be in contrast to what was. And so he writes this passage today. This is the passage, if you've ever been to the United Nations, that is carved on the walls there. The idea being that there will come a time, if you love God, and therefore keep his commandments and love one another, there is no more need for war. Your weapons will be changed into plowing weapons. You don't need to fight anymore because you're going to be in love with one another. And when that comes, not only will there be no violence between people, but no violence between animals. So the lion can lay down with the lamb, and so on. Isaiah also said that this would be a time when people would come to the one true temple, the Temple of Solomon, which is on a mount called Moriah. It's this place where there's still, a very, famous now Islam place to go worship. But basically, this was where Abraham tried to offer his son Isaac to God by slitting his throat. This is where they ended up building the temple. And the reason they built it there was that it's higher than the rest of the elevation around the entire city. And Moriah means high place. It also means high ideal, the vision of what should be. And so Isaiah is saying to the people, think of the contrast between your behavior now and the way it should be. And so I'm begging you, I'm urging you to move towards this vision, to give up the worship of other gods and to try to worship the one true God, to have this vision of the way God wants it to be. Well, no one listened. And the northern kingdom was conquered by the Assyrians in 721, and the southern kingdom, Judah, became a vassal of Assyria. Well, now we move forward to the time of St. Paul, second reading. This is the early part of the first century after Christ. And here, Paul is saying, if you really want to sort of keep the spirit of Isaiah, you want to put on Jesus Christ, as if it were a suit of clothing. Think of the metaphor. Think of the amount of money we spend on clothing. You can have a nice dress from Jones of New York. You can wear Ferragamo shoes, Jimmy Choo's shoes, all kinds of nice shoes. You can have a beautiful pocketbook. You can have all kinds of wonderful things that we adorn ourselves with, but they don't last. And so what about adorning your soul? What about putting on the behavior, the life of Jesus? And he sort of says, you know what that doesn't mean? And he gives some examples, one of which is drunkenness. There's nothing wrong with taking a drink. But if you have to become blotto to have a good time, if you doubt your self-worth to the point where socially you have to have at least 2 or 3 stiff drinks before you can interact with people, maybe you need to fix the problem inside of you, as opposed to having some exterior solution called alcohol. There's many people who see alcohol in the wrong way. They see it as, I've been a good guy today, so okay, I deserve 2 drinks. Or, I don't like my life. My life sucks, so therefore I'm going to have many drinks. Well, the solution of alcohol doesn't really work, because you wake up the next day with a headache, and your situation is the same. So, if you want to drink, no problem. You want to get drunk? Why? Then there's, the problem of sexual debauchery. You think about sexuality. Sexuality, you make love to someone that you love. It makes no sense to make love to someone that you don't love. If we go to hug someone, it's because we want to be close to that person. When you hug your partner, it's that you want to be one with them. In the same way when we kiss, in the same way when we make love. That's the real purpose. The physical act is a symbol of what you're feeling spiritually inside. Therefore, it is illogical to have that physical act do anything other than that. They talk about quarreling. You know, we think about quarreling, arguing. It's amazing. Our country right now, no one seems to like anyone. You know, if you're a Republican, you don't like the Democrats. If you're a Democrat, you don't like a Republican. I mean, we're all Americans. But you think about the arguments you've had. Most arguments are things of opinion. You know, for example, this is a church. Is it a beautiful church? That's a matter of opinion. You come in whatever you're wearing, and you may think, my God, this is beautiful, but that's a matter of opinion. Are you really willing to divide yourself off from one another over an opinion? You may be wrong. The idea is just to see things from different vantage points. But I see so many people who go through life. You know, I haven't talked to Aunt so-and-so in 38 years. And well, really? Why? I've seen plenty of families where, you know, members of the family have a big argument and years go by before they sort of make up. And usually they make up around the time when someone dies at a funeral because they realize, what am I doing? I'm wasting all these years. So, you know, it's okay to have an opinion, but it's an opinion. You know, don't carve it in stone. You know, and jealousy. Interesting one that he mentions. Jealousy is based less on the fact that, you know, there's something wrong with the person that I'm jealous. It's something wrong with me. You know, I had a lot of counseling of couples. And many times I would get a couple come in, and if it was, you know, husband or wife, a very insecure husband would buy a beautiful house for his wife, give her kind of whatever she wanted, but the understanding was, you got to stay in the house. You know, you can't get a job. Because the fear being, if she goes out and gets a job, and other people start complimenting her, and she realizes, why am I stuck with this guy? You know, I could be married to so-and-so here at the office. That, you know, his insecurity basically means he wants to keep her in sort of a golden cage. And the problem with that is, it's a cage. And the person in that cage begins to wake up and say, I don't want to live this way anymore. So, jealousy is based on the insecurity of the jealous person, not on the behavior of the other person. Well, St. Paul is saying, grow in those areas. Grow so that you have a drink but don't get drunk. You know, grow in the, you know, when you make love to your partner, it's an act of love, not just a physical act. You know, don't quarrel with one another. Try to bond with one another. And, you know, if you're jealous, don't be insecure. Your wife will respect you because you're a wonderful person. You have wonderful qualities. She's not stupid. She didn't marry you because, you know, you kind of conned her. She married you because she saw things inside of you that were wonderful, and she wanted to bond with those. And by doing those very, not simple, but common things, you grow spiritually. Now the last reading, you know, is Jesus sort of saying, you know, life is a process of growth. But, you know, death is at the end of life. There's an expiration date stamped on your rear end. You just don't know what it says. And therefore, you know, take advantage of every day. As I was preparing this sermon, I thought, years ago, I became director of what was called Trinity Counseling Service in Princeton. And the person who had been director before me was also a priest. And he was celebrating his 50th year of ordination. So there was a party, and we went to the party. And there was this woman and her husband, who I knew very well, who were members of the church in Princeton. And all of a sudden, at the table, she complains that she has this incredible headache. And at first she was telling us, next week they were going to France for vacation, and they were so happy about it. But the severity of the headache scared me, so I had someone call an ambulance. By the time the ambulance got there, she had lapsed into a coma. And she died the next day. And so she didn't go to France. She went into a grave. Life is precious. You just don't know when life will end. We hope it's a long way down the road, but you don't know. Therefore, take advantage of every day. If life indeed is this process of growth that Isaiah and Paul were telling us about, then take advantage of today. Grow today. Not because you have to, but because it's good for you. Because the more you grow, the happier you will be, and God wants you to be happy. So think about that as we are now in this season of Advent. Take a look at your life and see how things are going. If they're going great, don't get smug. Just continue on your growth process. However, if you've kind of tripped a couple of times over the last year, this is time to get up and correct that and go forward, growing in happiness to become what you're meant to be, the work of art.
Amen.